'Tis the season, the most wonderful time of the year. Celebration with friends and family. It's time to pay tribute to this jolly month. So join us as we get into the Christmas spirit. You've heard of Elf on the Shelf, but this is Venom on the Shelf.
Christmas! Oh, there's a Christmas tree. The whole third act takes place at Christmas, so this totally counts.
It looks like I'm going to see you at our Christmas party.
See? Christmas.
Why, isn't that exciting?
Edward Scissorhands follows Kim, an old hag who tells a bedtime story to her granddaughter entering flashback mode. Peg, played by the mum from The Lost Boys, is an Avon representative who isn't having much luck, so she heads to Tim Burton's house to find Johnny Depp, a man called Edward with scissors for hands, as subtle as the title is.
Yes, I know.
She realises he needs help and takes him home with her. Abducts. She abducts him. He never agrees.
Isn't it wild?
We enter flashback mode a lot as we see his inventor, played by Vincent Price, creating him but dying before giving him human hands. So why did he give him scissor hands in the first place? I've never understood this. It's not like he was half finished or anything. He specifically went out of his way to develop scissor hands. And then it was too late. Oh, by the way, Ed, here's some human hands. I'm dead.
Great, so then you know all about it.
The neighbours soon take a liking to Edward, including Berta from 2.5 Men, Crazy Lady from Pet Sematary, Peg's son Nick from Honey I Shrunk the Kids, and finally her daughter Kim, the old woman from the start, now played by Winona Ryder. Kim's dating a douchebag called Jim, because we all know a douchebag named Jim, who ends up clashing with Edward. Things go awry, and Edward realises he's far too different to coexist in their community, returning to his demonic slumber to forever live with Marilyn Manson.
Let's cut the comedy for a little while, alright?
The idea for the film came about from director Tim Burton when he was just a teenager. He always felt isolated and unable to communicate with his local community. He couldn't keep friends and he always felt like people wanted to leave him alone, but he didn't know why. As he was working on Beetlejuice, he hired an author, Caroline Thompson, to write up a draft screenplay which he did in just 3 weeks. He read a short story, Firstborn, about an abortion that came back to life, and he wanted to use certain aspects in this film. She specifically wrote Scissorhands as a love poem for Burton. She claims he's the most articulate person she's ever met, but he couldn't put a single sentence together. She did admit though that when she first heard the premise, a protagonist whose hands are made up of scissors, she found it to be the single silliest thing she had ever heard in her entire life.
Edward, don't you listen to her!
Despite working with Warner Brothers, they sold the film rights to 20th Century Fox, who still agreed to fund the movie, with Burton having complete control with a budget of around $8 million. They took inspiration from the Universal horror films, and Burton even wanted it to be a musical, but this idea was soon dropped. However, he would later bring it back for Sweeney Todd. It's basically the same film. Aren't all of his.
I agree with him.
Due to the success of the previous year's Batman, Burton gained a huge name and was actually given the choice to either make this, Batman Returns, or even a Beetlejuice sequel that still to this day has never happened. Tom Cruise was the first consideration for the lead role, but he wanted a much happier ending. Pfft, Burton doing a happy ending. Don't be silly.
Are you nuts?
Tom Hanks turned it down a star in The Bonfire of the Vanities, which flopped. Gary Oldman also rejected an offer, calling the story completely absurd, though he did admit when he saw the final film he finally understood it, but it was just too late. Jim Carrey and John Cusack were also considered, and William Hurt, Robert Downey Jr. and even Michael Jackson showed interest, but Burton refused to meet with them. Meanwhile, Johnny Depp was gaining popularity on 21 Jump Street, and although Burton wasn't familiar with it, he personally wanted Depp. And then he continued to want Depp in every single movie and the bedroom.
That's the nicer thing to do. That's what I would do.
As soon as he got the script, Johnny Depp cried like a baby, finding personal and emotional connections with the story. In preparation for the role, he studied many Charlie Chaplin movies to learn how to create sympathy without any dialogue. The studio were also really protective of the Edward Scissorhands look, that they kept the costume and Depp as secret as possible until the release. Burton liked working with Winona Ryder so much on Beetlejuice that she got the role for this one, though Drew Barrymore also auditioned. And I suppose the fact that she was dating Johnny Depp in real life at the time, that didn't hurt either.
I don't get why you give such a shit anyway.
In fact, Winona had to actually drop out of starring in The Godfather Part 3 to do this, and it's widely believed that Depp actually convinced her to do so even before he was cast in the movie himself. Burton also really wanted Gina Davis as Peg after working with her on Beetlejuice, but she was busy filming Quick Change and couldn't commit, and Crispin Glover also lost out for the part of her douchebag boyfriend Jim. God damn it, Jim. The Inventor was specifically written with Vincent Price in mind, and he was originally going to have a lot more screen time, but due to being terminally ill in real life and passing away not long after, his role was significantly cut down. But if you want some more casting trivia for you, this old guy, he's the old guy who delivers the penguin in Batman Returns. Even more impressive, this is Nick Carter from the Backstreet Boys. No, seriously, look it up.
I'll be darned.
Filming took place over 3 months in Tampa Bay, Florida, and was released on December the 7th, 1990 to universal acclaim. The movie was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Makeup but walked away empty-handed, though the production design did scoop up a BAFTA. Johnny Depp was nominated for a Golden Globe but sadly didn't win, though the movie itself did pick up a Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation and a Saturn Award for Best Fantasy Film, as well as Danny Elfman being nominated for a Grammy for the musical score. Tim Burton admitted it's not his best film, but it's his own personal favourite due to his emotional connection to the character, and there was even a stage adaptation in 2005, which then repeated again in 2010, and in 2014 and 2015, a comic book series actually followed, serving as a sequel taking place several decades after the original, which I've not read, but I'd actually be interested to check out. Burton himself stated though that he would never want a sequel to be made, as he feels it would just rob the original of its purity. It's pretty good.
Are you serious?
It captures this very dreamlike fantasy feeling that many films are just missing nowadays. Although the houses clearly are decorated to look nothing like a real neighbourhood, it adds to the whimsical feeling you get when you watch it. Apparently the intention was to have the film told through Edward's point of view, which is exactly why everything seems so magical and whimsical. My only problem with that theory is then, how are there so many scenes where Edward isn't around? How can he then be telling the story? Fan theories are stupid.
You're all crazy.
Although one that kind of holds up is, it's often disputed whether or not this really happened or if Kim is just telling her granddaughter a fictitious fairy tale. I mean, it's never actually confirmed or denied, so it's left open to the viewer's interpretation, which I think is pretty cool. There's legitimately not a single acting performance or dislike. Everyone brings these characters to life perfectly, and they were all chosen for the exact role they were meant for. Depp brings such sympathy for the character with such little dialogue, it is astounding, which is only backed up by the incredible costume and makeup. The metaphor for the outcast character is nicely done. Yeah, it does continue the likes of Frankenstein and Beauty and the Beast, even King Kong, but many themes have been done before. This adds to it and makes it its own. I find it a more entrancing tale because of this. There's even a scene where someone asks Edward if he would want to have normal hands, and he says yes. When pressed about not being special anymore, Peg backs him up and says that no matter what, he'll always be special and not normal. It's a really good message at the end of it all, and quite inspiring for those like myself who always felt different and unlike the others. The set of the castle is Burton written all over it, but it looks gorgeous, and Danny Elfman's score truly brings the magic to life even more. There's also great direction that you often miss on the first viewing, like a brief shot of Edward glancing out the window at Peg before he's even introduced, or how about this eerie shadow of him as she investigates the castle. I also adore the comedy. I think the first quarter of the film is hilarious, and it's a very self-aware parody of the Universal horror films. Peg is having no luck selling Avon, so like any annoying salesperson, she persists and even goes to the scariest goddamn castle she can find. She waltzes in and sees nothing wrong with this. She is oblivious to this demonic hellhole. She finds Edward, is a little startled, but then acts like it's normal and offers to help him with his face, and then randomly takes him home with her as if it's normal behavior. That's hilarious. This was actually based on the writer's mum in real life, who very often would bring home strangers, but I think that makes it even funnier. This bright and colourful neighbourhood, and she's got Alice Cooper here in her car. There's even a part where they throw a friendly barbecue, and none of the locals find it out of the ordinary either. This is so funny. And some of the straight-faced humour is also delivered perfectly.
So, Edward, did you have a productive day?
Mrs. Monroe showed me where the salon's going to be. You could have a cosmetics counter.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Great.
And then she showed me the back room where she took all of her clothes off.
But, much like any decent film, there's gonna be flaws.
Why is it snowing, Grandma? Where does it come from?
Oh, that's a long story, sweetheart.
It's a long story where snow comes from. What? The clouds?
I guess it would have to start with scissors.
Oh, scissors, yeah. Pfft. Well, my grade in science was wasted.
And once, there was even a man who had scissors for hands.
Mom, Grandma's off her medication again. There's a scene right near the beginning with David Arquette's clone and this woman with the most obvious camel toe in the world, and I guess they needed to establish that she's a slut for what happens later, but the dialogue is so forced into sexual innuendos, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you see, it's easy. Your food trap's clogged, that's all.
How's your sausage?
You see this bulb here? You just unscrew this. Mm-hmm. Okay. And out she pops.
Well, maybe we should eat our flakes.
And then you just take this and put it back in here nice and easy. Be careful not to force it because it fits in there by itself. And then you just screw this back on.
Can I drink your juice?
So are you telling me no one in this community has ever walked into this garden out of curiosity before? I mean, they had to have collected Vincent Price's body at some point, right? The little girl at the start says that it's haunted. No one's had the balls to check it out except Peg now. And also, how did he manage to sculpt all of these hedges that are way taller than he is? We never see a ladder.
Are you alone?
Do you live up here all by yourself? What happened to your face?
Oh man, what the fuck is up with your face, yeah?
And for some reason, this is such a big deal. A neighbour spots Peg having someone in a car, and that's all it took to spur gossip amongst town. This must be the most boring village ever. I mean, this is probably intentional comedy too, but I'm unsure of the joke here. Do these people not have a life? I mean, they don't even know about Edward's abnormality here, so it makes no sense as to why they're so interested in Peg having someone over. They don't even know it's a guy yet.
Here's my daughter, Kim, all dressed for the junior prom.
So Winona is a senior in high school. I'm not sure how their grades work, but I'm guessing that makes her 17 or 18. And Edward was created a long time ago, so he's probably a lot older. Is this on some Edward Bella paedophile thing going? Look how unfurnished their living room is. There's hardly anything in it. Why the hell did they put Edward in Kim's bedroom? It's just for such an obvious joke. There's no other reason. Why does Peg leave Edward to get dressed alone, knowing damn well he has no hands? I'd kind of let it go if this only happened once, but it's one joke for the entire movie. They just seem to forget this blatantly ridiculous deformity. Oh look, he's struggling. Who would have seen that coming? Look, they don't even feed him. They just watch him struggle. These are horrible people. Also, if he requires food, how did he live so long in the castle? Does Walmart deliver there?
Then you blend and blend and blend. Blending is the secret.
Especially in a Tim Burton film. Just blend all these ideas into your own. There's a scene nearly half an hour in where Edward sees Kim's dad trimming hedges and he copies his actions to learn to do it. But then how did he manage to trim the hedges earlier when Peg investigated the garden? Yeah, still a more realistic looking dinosaur than Jurassic World. The neighbours even fill up Peg's entire answering machine with messages about a special guest. What is wrong with these women?
Shame on you keeping your unusual guest all to yourselves. We think that's mighty selfish of you.
No,
Why do they all just assume 1, it's a man, 2, it's an attractive man, 3, it's an attractive single man, 4, it's an attractive single heterosexual man? Get a life! Go to work! How does Edward have flashbacks to before he was even created? I'm obligated to let it slide though because the mechanical thingies look like Jack Skellington, so it's a nice Easter egg. Why exactly do the women find him hot? I mean, I know it's Johnny Depp, but he's almost completely unrecognisable and it's not like he could do much in bed. How they even acknowledge this later?
Forget holding her hand. Picture the damage you could do other places.
So why would you want to bone him? Sickos? Why the hell does Peg and her husband tell the whole neighbourhood about a guy with Scissorhands staying with them, but not their goddamn teenage daughter, especially since he's sleeping in her room? And there it is. It took 41 minutes to build up to that joke that you saw coming. As soon as he walked in that room, that first scene, you saw it coming. They were building up to it. Yeah, just to catch you off guard. No, it was just a lazy, obvious joke. Especially considering they show a damn couch bed just moments later. Why wasn't he sleeping there in the first place instead of your daughter's room, you weirdo? Oh look, he forgot Edward can't hold his own drink again. This joke never gets old. Ha ha ha. How many times are you going to do this gag?
Hi.
Okay, they saved it. Wait, so they also have a spare bed in their son's room? They have 2 spare beds? Why was Edward in Kim's room?
just come downstairs, shake the man, and say, shake his hand. Well, not literally.
How many hand jokes are they going to come up with in this film? Should I think of some for him? Should I give him a hand? No, it wasn't funny. So Kim's brother Kevin actually takes Edward to school for show and tell despite his parents forbidding it, but it looks more like he's traumatizing them.
One chop to a guy's neck, and it's all over.
Well, they're in therapy for life.
I'm sorry.
Not the first time Johnny Depp has dropped some meat on Winona Ryder's crotch.
Go ahead, smile, it's funny.
When Edward starts trimming Dog's fur, it looks more like he's massacring the poor thing. And is it just me, or does this look horrible? In fact, all of these do. They look terrible, and the owners are so happy with them. What the hell? He destroys these dogs. This is borderline animal abuse, and they're all lined up for it. Yeah, come and make my dog ugly today. And then we get one of the weirdest scenes I have ever witnessed. Edward gives a haircut, which is apparently really seductive. This makes the scene in You Don't Mess with a Zohan look PG. This is ridiculous, and she gets so turned on by it. And despite earlier Edward cutting himself so easily with the slightest bit of movement, he's now able to reposition her head several times without hurting her one bit. And then the women even line up for seductive haircuts. This was again intentional humor, but I just find it more weird than funny, and these haircuts are terrible too. This one looks like a goddamn octopus. I also need to talk about the love story. There's been many forced love stories over the years, but there's usually a scene to initiate it. Moulin Rouge, the misunderstanding sequence. Titanic, the suicide sequence. Here, there's literally nothing. Edward sees Kim and is obviously taken aback by her because he's not used to social interaction. She looks about his age, allegedly, so that makes sense and it's not reciprocated. She's with Jim and shows very little attention to Edward whatsoever. But then he goes on a talk show, someone asks him if he's single. Again, why do they all want his penis? And Kim suddenly stares at him all lovingly. Why? Where did this come from? And from this moment on, she suddenly has a soft spot for him and it's out of nowhere. Towards the end, when the police close in on him, she tells him to run and protects him, which is a nice moment, but it's just beginning of the relationship I have an issue with. It's completely out of the blue. In fact, even Jim's character has a drastic change. She's nice to Edward at first, even compliments him, and then all of a sudden he switches and is the complete douchebag of the film. These are just rushed and forced character changes, to the point he even treats his friends like crap randomly too. So as this slut gives Edward his first boner, I have to ask, someone is clearly a paedophile here. I mean, either Edward is, considering Kim is in high school, or Edward is the same age as her and these grown women are paedophiles. Which one is it? Because this is all very disturbing. And does he even have a penis? Who knows?
Shut up!
So there's a whole scene with Jim and Kim trying to break into a house and they abandon Edward. He can't get back out the door. The cops later say they disabled the system so he can escape, but then he walks free by himself. How'd he open the door if he couldn't before? In fact, if the security system going off prevented him from getting out, how the hell did Kim and Jim escape? And why do the police not realise who this is? He's been all over the news and they've not heard of Edward goddamn Scissorhands. They just think he's holding knives of some kind. And why doesn't he just say, no, you don't understand, these are my hands? And why do the neighbours stop them from shooting him? We find out that slutty woman claims Edward raped her and spread lies about him. And now they think he's a criminal. They hate him. They want him dead. So why do they protect him? So many questions.
Dear, stealing is not the way to get it. Stealing is not the way to get anything.
Except for cool ideas for a movie. And amazingly, they really believe Edward managed to pull off this burglary entirely on his own. Yeah, he can't even hold his own drink, but he did this completely solo. In fact, his clothes have clearly changed, and they know he can't get dressed on his own, so how do they expect him to pull off this crap?
I knew it was Jim's house.
You did?
Yes.
Well, then why'd you do it?
Because you asked me to.
Oh! Okay, I can't make fun of that. Right in the feels.
You want to give me that new haircut?
Again?
Yeah, sure. It makes me proud to have you as my own personal hairdresser.
You mean slave? I mean, think about it. Peg intruded on Edward's home uninvited, kidnapped him, took him home without his consent, and then forced him to cut hedges, dogs, and hair. This is a hostage situation story. Where does Edward even get this ice from to make these sculptures? And why does Kim randomly dance around in the snow like this? I mean, who does this during a goddamn snowstorm? Hey!
Now you've done it.
Wait, so why the hell did he yell, hey? Hey! In the first place? I mean, he's angry now because Edward accidentally cut Kim, but he accidentally cut Kim because Jim yelled hey and he turned around and was startled. So why did he yell in the first place? And why would you even pick on him? This doesn't make sense.
Stay away from her, okay? I mean it. You can't touch anything without destroying it.
Yeah! So why are you bullying him? He can kill you with a high five! He's got scissor hands! Why are you bullying it? Would you pick on Johnny Machine Gun Face?
I'm calling the police!
Hey, please? Someone cut my hedges. Edward actually takes the time to set up this demonic hedge outside the crazy lady's house. Why would he do that?
Hello, Mrs. Boggs. I'm here to see the man with the hands.
You mean the man without the hands? Dumbass.
You know, when I brought Edward down here to live with us, I really didn't think things through.
No!
I can't.
He's got scissor hands! Stupid git. They actually let Kevin wander around by himself late at night. Must just be something to do with that name, Kevin. He's always got terrible parents.
Have they caught him yet?
Who?
Him, that cripple.
Well, he's not a cripple though, is he? He can walk, you know. Look, even Jim drives down hedges just to remind us, in case we've forgotten, that he is in fact the bad guy.
Kevin.
No. I think you mean Kevin! You'd think by now that Edward would realise what he's capable of and, you know, stop when he begins accidentally cutting Kevin's face to pieces. Who thought picking on someone who has scissor hands would get you cut? Hey, shouldn't someone tell Edward that he shouldn't run with scissors? Why does the cop do fake gunshots instead of just going in to kill Edward? It makes no sense! Does he want to protect the town? I mean, they're convinced he's a killer. Is he too much of a wimp to go in the castle as well? Send Peg, she seems to be the only one here with a pair of balls. In fact, how come this takes place first and yet somehow Kim gets ahead of the mob and inside the building without them seeing her?
I was so afraid. I thought you were dead.
I didn't.
So you clearly heard what she just said, so you had a clear shot of Edward, and you could have shot him and killed him, but you chose not to. Oh look, you missed. What an idiot. And really, this stab is all he had to do to end it? Just seems anticlimactic. And the mob don't even see this happening. Last time we saw them, they were by the gate where the cop left them. Yet in a few minutes, they show up again to discover the body. Consistent. And why don't they just take Kim's word for it that Edward is dead? They don't believe the cop, but they'll believe his girlfriend who's been defending him for the whole film. She even offers them to have a look. Isn't that insanely risky? What if they said, okay, we will? But instead, now is when they all decide to go home and get a life.
You could have gone up there. You still could go.
No, sweetheart. I'm an old woman now. I would rather him remember me the way I was.
Doesn't explain why you didn't go back there, you know, before, when you were young.
How do you know he's still alive?
I don't know. Not for sure, but I believe he is. If he weren't up there now, I don't think it would be snowing.
So he's alive, and you know that because it's snowing. And Edward is God. So still nobody checks out the place. They're under the impression he's dead and nobody investigates the location at all. He's never spotted again. No one's the least bit curious. And is he getting food from Walmart again? So many questions. Okay, it borrows plot elements from other stories. Sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense and is sloppily put together, but it's still a charming little story with amazing music, great sets, legendary performances. Edward Scissorhands, in my mind, deserves its place in this book.